Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Garner, today joined with no one, actually. This is, I believe this is the first solo review we've done on the whole entire site. First off, apologies that this review for Kung Fu Panda 3 is so late. Me and Tom tried to work something out because, as you know, if you check our previous videos, me and him did a really great discussion review on the first two, which you can check back on our old videos. But it was just our schedules just conflicting all the time, and I realised that this review is already a week late, and the way things are going, we probably wouldn't be able to get one out until the middle of next week or some point. So I just thought, what the hell, I'll jump on, I'll do my best. So I apologise if this review's maybe a little scattered or a little fragmented, but I'm going to do my best to keep this thing together and talk all things Kung Fu Panda 3. So, yeah, like a brief introduction to what I thought on the first two. As I said, you can check out our review on that for a much more in-depth discussion on those two films, but I have gone on record and said, currently with Kung Fu Panda 3 added, this is my favourite animated series of films since Toy Story. I know that's massive hype. Toy Story's in a completely different league, don't get me wrong, but I do find the Kung Fu Panda films at this point really actually emotionally engaging. They're exciting, they're fun. I watch them all with just a beaming grin on my face all the way through from beginning to end. One was a huge surprise. I remember seeing the trailers for it and thinking that looks terrible. What's this movie called? Kung Fu Panda. And I went to see it, absolutely just fell in love with it. With that, I initially went into the second one with a huge amount of hype because I loved the first one so much, and initially I didn't really care for the second one all that much. I think that maybe my expectations were so high, but upon watching it a good few more times afterwards on DVD, I've really grown to love that one. And then we get on to Kung Fu Panda 3. So before I just get into my review, this film was actually pushed back quite a few times. I'm not exactly sure on the date it was originally intended, but I know it was also going to be coming out last year, 2015, in December, I think. And obviously there was a little sci-fi movie coming out that month in Star Wars Force Awakens, so they very smartly pushed this one back to March of this year. And currently, I think it's had a little bit of a disappointing overall gross, to be honest. It had a bigger opening weekend in China than in the US. That's not very surprising. I know these films do really well in China. But so far, I think it's the lowest opening in the entire franchise. Currently, as of recording this, it has a $359.2 million gross on a budget of $145. Obviously, on top of that, you have to add all of the advertising and marketing campaigns, so I don't think it's going to quite make as much as the other two, which is a real shame because part of me does really want this franchise to continue, but hopefully it can get above 400, and we'll see if the future of the franchise does carry on after that. But anyway, that's enough talk, so let's get into the plot for this thing. So if I bring up the trusty IMDb, it says, continuing his legendary adventures of awesomeness, Po must face two hugely epic but different threats, one supernatural and the other a little closer to his home. So without further ado, let's get into our review for Kung Fu Panda 3.
You must take the next step on your journey, from warrior to teacher.
But I'm no good at it.
Oh no! It's the Dragon Teacher! He's so handsome! What?
Paul? Oh, hey, Dad. What's up?
You're terrible at it.
Who are you?
I'm looking for my son.
Dad?
Give your old man a hug!
Come with me. There's a secret panda village in the mountains. Welcome home, son.
You look just like me, but a baby. You're like me, but old.
Oh, he's adorable! Ow! I'm good!
Okay, so I guess the first point that you have to jump into this movie is its characters, because at this point, the third one in the series, we've grown to love these characters and watch them develop, and that's no different here. You have your main character of Po, played once again by Jack Black, who just completely embodies the character in all of these movies. And in this one, it's probably closer to the second one in that he goes on a really, really personal journey. In this one, it's sort of a journey of self-discovery. He doesn't know who he really is or where he comes from and things like that. So the whole film is him, you can see this in the trailer, is him meeting up with his biological father, Li Shan, played by Bryan Cranston. And it's him going on this quest to the panda village and discovering what it is to be a panda, basically. And it's if he fits in with them or is he something different. And you really get that sense in this that Po really doesn't know who he is. And I think that was a really great place to take the story, actually, because this has been something that's been developing from the previous two. And I've always said this, and I said this in my review for 1 and 2, what I think the strength of these films is how they do develop all of the characters, really, between films. Especially Po, obviously, as he is the main character. Some of the best stuff in this movie is him dealing with who he is and interacting with all these brilliant characters of all the pandas. Each one has a unique personality, and they're just so fun to watch. And then you have other returning cast members also, with Shifu, played by Dustin Hoffman, Mr. Ping, played by James Hong. And Mr. Ping's always been one of my favourite characters in these films. I think he's absolutely hilarious. But like the second one, he actually gets quite a lot of drama in this one, a lot of heartfelt moments, which are some of this series' strong points. Shifu's in this one a lot more than the second one, which was brilliant because I think Dustin Hoffman's fantastic. And he's like the Yoda character now. In the first one, it was Master Oogway, and then he passed the title on to Shifu. And we really get a sense of that in this one, that he is this wisely. You still get the odd scathing remarks from Shifu to Po, but that's just his character, and it's always fun to see that dynamic between the two. Other returning cast members, you have all the Furious Five back as well, played by Angelina Jolie, Jackie Chan, Lucy Liu, Seth Rogen, David Cross. And I guess this is sort of a recurring problem for me with all of these films, is that they really don't get all that much to do in the grand scheme of things. It's such a shame because you've got all these brilliant voice actors, brilliant characters as well. And I really, really want to see the five developed a lot more. I know they've done that TV show, which is just like a little spin-off sort of thing to the actual main films, which probably develops them a little bit more if you're going to keep that in continuity with these films. But the main films are the things that matter. And I just think that I would like to see a film where they have a little bit more to do. That was probably one of the strong points of Kung Fu Panda 2, was where Po actually went on this journey with them all. New characters, as I mentioned, we have Po's biological father, Li Shan, played by Bryan Cranston, brilliantly played by Bryan Cranston, actually. Bryan Cranston's just awesome. If anyone's seen Breaking Bad or that Godzilla movie that came out a couple of years ago, he was definitely the strongest point in that. And his voice work in this is fantastic. He completely gets into the character. There's a lot of heartfelt moments with him, and moments of a bit of mystery as well, which is also really nice. Then you have another new character in Mei Mei, played by Kate Hudson, who I don't want to say is a love interest of Po, but she's at the Panda Village, she's a dancer, and that leads to quite a lot of funny gags between the two. And your main new character in this film is the brand new villain, the villain of Kai, played by J.K. Simmons, who's almost indistinguishable in this movie, in all honesty. Like, if I didn't already know that J.K. Simmons was playing him, I would not have been able to have pinned that voice down. Kai is an ox who has... I don't want to go too much in depth yet because this is still the spoiler-free territory, but the beginning of the film gives you a backstory on his character and his stakes and why he wants to go on this quest and do what he needs to do. Voice-wise, he's brilliant. I think one of my only problems with this film is the villain himself. He doesn't really have too much depth. If I'm going to compare him to one of the villains from the previous two, it's definitely more in the line of Tai Lung, which was Ian McShane's character from the first movie. Ultimately, it boils down to he wants more power, he feels like he's been jaded in the past, and he's trying to make up for that and become ultimately powerful. Whereas in Kung Fu Panda 2, where you had Gary Oldman's character of Lord Shen, he had a much more personal goal of what he was trying to achieve. He was trying to uphold his family dynasty, foolishly doing what he believed was right, even committed mass genocide. I think there was just a lot more going to his character than Kai in this one. He initially boils down to just a brute with... And if anyone's ever played any video games out there, the God of War series, one of my favourite video game series of all time, he basically brandishes the Blades of Chaos, which are the weapons that Kratos had in those games, the blades with the chains that are like fused to his arms, exactly like that, and I got a lot of flashbacks from that in his fighting style. Kai isn't a bad villain. Overall, I think he still does exactly what he needs to in a film like this, but it did seem like a bit of a step back when the series looked like it was really developing its villains. And in fact, I actually think that Tai Lung is a better villain than Kai, in all honesty, so that would be one of my only problems. It's not a huge problem, because I still really like the character, but they definitely play him more for laughs in this movie. There's and you see this in the trailer, there's a scene where he's trying to introduce himself and Poe will keep cutting him off as he's trying to deliver his monologue, or there'll be a scene where he's introducing himself saying, "I am Kai the Great," and no one recognises him, and he just feels like really sad and let down that no one knows who he is. It kind of takes away his menacing factor, I thought. That's a very small problem, as I said, but that is probably the most notable one I have in this movie. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the animation in this new one, because without a shadow of a doubt, this is one of the most prettiest animated films I think I've ever seen in my life. It's definitely the most visually stunning one of the Kung Fu Panda films, and I just guess that goes without saying as, you know, as the years develop. I think the first one came out 2008, now we're in 2016, so animation's definitely come a long way, and visually this is absolutely just jaw-dropping from beginning to end. The colours, the staging of everything, just the landscapes, everything looks phenomenal in this movie. Without going too much in depth, there's some scenes in the spirit realm which almost look like a painting, and what I love about the Kung Fu Panda films as well as, and the other two have done this as well, is how they integrate 2D animation as well, hand-drawn. And this one probably does that a lot more than the other two do. There's a lot of scenes in this that are done in that 2D style, and even makes use of like a split screen thing. Almost looks like an anime with like speed lines and things like that. They definitely do a lot more creative things with the animation in this one, and this is why I kind of want to see the series continue within reason. I mean, with 3 for 3 at the minute, I really, really, really love this movie. As I have with the other two. So it would be a shame if it did carry on and then we started getting really bad ones. But just based on the animation alone, there's so much more they could do with this and get really more creative with it if we're going off from what they did in this movie. It is seriously absolutely stunning. I saw this in 2D. It is available to see in 3D, so if any of you have seen it in 3D, please do comment and let me know if the 3D was any good, because if it is, I might check it out in that. With animated films, I know that they're among the best for 3D. How to Train Your Dragon is one that's often brought up with the flying sequences, but I always like to see them in 2D. That might just be my personal bias towards 2D. I've always preferred that as a viewing format. But there's just so much colour, and I think you'd lose a lot of that with 3D glasses on, as it naturally makes it look darker. But as I said, if anyone has seen it in 3D, I would be really curious to see if it's done well, because there are some moments in this movie where, again, in the spirit realm, where I'm looking at it and think that this would actually look absolutely phenomenal in 3D. We need to talk about the action as well. Although it's an animated film, this is some of the best kung fu I've ever seen in my life. The fighting has always been great in the other two. Really, really impressive to watch. Not so much in the second one, I don't think, because the villain of Lord Shen was very, very different. He was a more methodical and manipulative kind of villain, whereas in the first one, Tai Lung is an all-out brawler, so you get a lot more fighting with him. This one is more in line with the first one, I'd say. There's definitely a lot more fighting in this one than the second one, but even then, the final showdown, without going into anything, doesn't naturally boil down to an all-out brawl. They do something very creative with it, which is really, really nice, that they change it up in each film. but the action's fantastic. The jokes as well, just the gags that run all the way through it are brilliant. We get a lot more that are sort of sprinkled through the movie, and they get payoffs and they get brought up a lot. There's a lot of recurring ones which are brilliant. Humor-wise, although there are a lot of jokes sprinkled through it like that, as I've only seen this film currently once, so I think I definitely need to see it a few more times to see just how it falls in line with the other two and whether I like this one the most or if it's my second favourite. There were some jokes in this one that didn't hit for me, but then as soon as one didn't, another one would come back in, and I don't know if I had that problem so much with the other two. I thought all the jokes just completely hit with me. This one, it took a while for me to get into, in all honesty, into the film. I think it was the opening 5 to 10 minutes I really wasn't sure where this film was going, if I was going to like it or not, but then straight after that I was completely on board with it, and I came out of this film and I absolutely loved it. And I really need to hit on the section of the music in this one, the soundtrack. So this was the first one in the series that was only done by Hans Zimmer. The previous two were done by both Hans Zimmer and John Powell, who I believe did the music to How to Train Your Dragon. And I mean, nothing against John Powell, he's an absolutely fantastic composer, but in this one you really kind of don't notice his absence all too much. Maybe Hans Zimmer is more focused on the action music in it and not so much the heartfelt stuff, but there are some genuinely emotional scenes in this movie and the soundtrack just comes right through. I love that there are main themes throughout this, and you don't know how rare that is in a movie now, that a soundtrack has a theme dedicated to a particular character and it gets brought up throughout the whole film. It's recurring, it automatically tethers you to that character, and the soundtracks to these films are absolutely just phenomenal. They are among my favourite soundtracks, I would say, to any films. Definitely some of Hans Zimmer's best, and you get exactly the same in this. You get a new theme for Kai, which is almost like a Western infused, really, his theme. It's definitely a lot different to what we've heard in the franchise before, but yet it totally works because it still keeps that oriental quality to it. And just hearing those main themes come back, it's just emotional. Always hearing the main theme to Kung Fu Panda. Really nice stuff going on with the music in this one. So I'll just now get into the positives and negatives before I move into the spoiler section. So positives, it's the best animation in the Kung Fu Panda franchise and one of just the best animated films in terms of its animation I've ever seen. The comedy is there, it has a lot of heartfelt moments, and that's what I love about this franchise, is that they can have all the over-the-top kung fu action, but they always keep it grounded to character. I love what they do with the character of Po in this one and where they're taking him. He never completely regresses to what his character was in the first movie. He's always advancing, learning new things about himself and his powers. You get some great new characters in there, especially with Li Shan, played by Bryan Cranston. His dynamic with Po and Mr. Ping as well is fantastic to watch in this movie. Negatives, the villain isn't all too memorable, unfortunately, and maybe this was just me, but it did take me a while to get into the movie, but get past the first 10 minutes and I definitely liked this one. Whether I liked it as much as the other two, I'm still unsure, but it's definitely a solid entry into the franchise, and in all honesty, it could be the final one in the trilogy, not just based on how it ends, but also because it hasn't done as well, I don't think, currently at the box office as the previous two did. So maybe the studio will take that as a sign and not want to progress with this series any further, which will be a shame, but also if they do stop here, it will be one of the most solid animated franchises I've ever seen in my life. So now we're going to get into spoiler talk now. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and you still want to see it, probably stop this video, pause it, come back. I'm not going to go into too many spoilers, but it's just stuff that I did want to hit on. So first, Master Oogway is back in this one. I think in Kung Fu Panda 2 he may have only got a mention, or you may have seen just a brief sort of shot of him. In this one, no, the entire character is back, and we are just sort of thrown straight into this movie. When this film started, I almost felt like I'd missed a little bit before, because you are just thrown into the spirit realm. There's Oogway hanging out, being awesome, and then Kai comes along and he captures Oogway's soul in the spirit world. And that's what Kai's character's all about in this. He collects people's chi and turns it into a jade figure. I'm explaining this in a spoiler section, so if people are watching this, then they've clearly seen the movie, so it seems a bit weird me explaining the context, but just their confrontation at the start, you immediately know that the fighting style in this movie is going to be completely different. It's very ethereal in the spirit realm, and as I said, it almost looks like an oil painting or just a painting in general, and I love how the animation matches that. And then another factor I really liked in this with the spoilers is that with the two fathers in it, so you've got Bryan Cranston's character and James Hong, and they initially obviously have a set to because James Hong is Poe's adoptive father. Bryan Cranston comes along and just goes, oh yeah, no, this is my son, I've never met him yet, I'm going to take him back to the Panda Village with me. And we saw signs of this rivalry in the second one, and it just sort of comes to a head in this one where initially James Hong hates Bryan Cranston, and he comes along on the journey with them, and they always have a set to. But there is one scene in this movie which really, really got me, and well, actually two. There's one where Poe's father shows him a photograph of his mother, and we get that absolutely just heart-wrenching flashback to the second one where Lord Shen led the attack on the village and killed all the pandas, and she almost does like a Moses thing where she puts baby Poe in a basket, sends the basket away, and then flees, but ultimately to her death. And it was the music in that scene, and just being reminded of that scene, I was like, oh god, manly tears are about to be shed again at this film. But then going back to the two fathers, there's a scene where they agree to disagree, they put aside their differences and say that Poe doesn't need just one of us, he needs both of us, and they come to mutual understanding and work together in a hilarious way when they're fighting off Kai and his jade figures in the village. And actually, as the film developed and we get these scenes with Poe's father and Mr. Ping, his adoptive father, all throughout this movie I thought that Bryan Cranston was going to actually be a villain. Maybe he was working for Kai. Perhaps that's just because I've seen Bryan Cranston play Heisenberg, where he's just playing an evil character. But there was just something really off about him from the start. Even with his initial casting, I thought, oh, this guy's going to be bad news. And obviously later on in the film, we discover that he doesn't really know Chi, and he sort of just brought Poe along just because he wanted to bond with him, I guess, or bring him back to his people. But he doesn't actually have any kind of Chi powers. None of the pandas do. They've lost their way with it. I thought he was going to be working for Kai and he was going to like turn him in at the end, or he was going to become evil, or maybe Poe would have to fight his father or something like that. Ultimately doesn't boil down to that, but that was just something that was running through my head the whole time. I don't know if any of you guys picked up on that, but there was definitely something a little off about his character. Another thing I wanted to bring up as well about the spoilers are the references to previous Kung Fu Panda films. I just mentioned one about the photograph to Poe's mother, and it goes back into the flashback of that. But even in smaller little gags as well, and I'm sure if some people haven't watched them recently, then a lot of these jokes would go over the head, but I've just seen each of these films so many times that I was just loving all of the references. And it's very similar to Toy Story 3 in that respect, how Toy Story 3 goes back to its original one and brings back a lot of jokes from those earlier movies. It's the same in this one, like when Poe's showing his father around the Jade Palace in the trophy room. I think it's the Urn of Whispering Warriors it's called, and in the first one Poe accidentally was really clumsy and kept knocking it over, and you'd hear like the souls of all the people contained in the jar just screaming. That comes back into it as well, where him and his father are trashing stuff. See a lot more trophies in that room as well in this one. It was just really nice to go back to that environment. It felt like the movie was coming full circle, although I think originally, I think the director said, like, they've got 6 of these movies planned in total, so we're going to have, like, the Kung Fu Panda saga. Whether it's ultimately going to get to 6, I'm unsure, because I'm trying to think of a modern animated series that has actually got that far. I don't think one currently has, because it just takes so many years for these movies to get made. But I would be happy if the franchise ended here, because the ending song to the film is a reprise of Kung Fu Fighting, which was used in the first one. They changed the lyrics, and it wasn't exactly the original version of the song, but they do it in this one as well. And you do get a sense that it had come full circle. Like, Po goes back into the spirit realm. He ultimately commits suicide, which is really deep. Like, he commits suicide to go to the spirit realm to fight Kai in that world, and the fight there is incredible. It's a bit one-sided, in all honesty. I was hoping for a bit more of a final confrontation in terms of fighting between the two, but it's very much Po becomes overpowered and quickly beats Kai down. They do some really breathtaking stuff, actually. Like, he channels the spirit of a dragon, and it's like flying around and fighting Kai with that. I thought that was absolutely gorgeous to watch. The soundtrack just really coming through in that scene for me. And then there's a final farewell to Oogway, where Oogway says you can stay here in the spirit realm, or, you know, you can send yourself back and go back to the living world. And of course Po does. The whole village learns the power of Chi and what it takes to... all the village finds their way again. They learn the power of Chi. They bring Po back. And then everyone's happy at the end singing Kung Fu Fighting. And it's just a really, really nice ending. I was smiling all the way through this movie. And it is a very, very satisfying conclusion to the series. If they do choose to leave it off here, it's a very, very solid trilogy. Because the second one did end on a cliffhanger, and then this pays that off. This one doesn't end on a cliffhanger at all. It's much like the first one, where it's just a very, very conclusive ending. So for those respects, I could see this as the last one.
You must be the Dragon Warrior.
How about you spare me the chit chat?
I'm going to take your
Chit chat.
in this
Chitty chitty chat chat chat.
in this
Chit chat.
So I guess that does it for my review on Kung Fu Panda 3. It just feels really awkward that I've done this one on my own, so I apologise if this isn't as fluid or as engaging as perhaps some of the other reviews are that we have on the channel, where we've got multiple people and we can have a conversation about it. I've done the best I can, so I would appreciate any comments or feedback on things like this. So be sure to comment, subscribe, let me know what you thought of Kung Fu Panda 3. Let me know what you think of Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2, just the franchise in general. Would you like to see it continue, or do you, like me, think that this would be a good place to leave it off and just end the franchise on a high note? Whatever you like, please do drop me a comment. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, we've got a lot more reviews coming up these few weeks. I will have reviews for the horror film The Witch. There'll be one for 10 Cloverfield Lane, Zootopia, and the exciting Batman v Superman next week. So please do hit that subscribe button, because it is the best way to keep track of all the reviews and reactions that we do on the channel. So yeah, that'll do it for my review today, and until the next video, I will see you guys next time.